Good morning, Bella Vista. We're back again with the Mayor's Wrap. It's going to be some exciting things today because that's everything that Mayor Christie says. It's exciting, isn't it, Mayor Christie?
I certainly hope so.
It is, it is. Well, I absolutely, as a citizen, but also just a resident, I also just enjoy knowing what you've done since last month.
Well, we've made a lot of progress.
You have.
Yep.
So you want to talk about the financials first?
Yeah, sure. These are the first quarter, and we are and still remain in excellent shape. The revenues are over budget by $754,000. The expenses are underrunning at 1.1 million, and our cash, I was going to say reserves. It's not really. It's cash on hand. Is 9.6 million, and you've heard me talk before. We always have to have 25%
Right.
on hand. Well, that 9.6 represents 57%. So some of that will come down because we're just about to start resurfacing, and that'll decrease by 2.4 million. But we're still in excellent financial shape, and looking forward to just continuing to move. And for those of you that are purchasing on the internet, thank you. That's one of our strongest sales tax numbers.
Great.
And very, very pleased that we're in such financial shape.
Yeah.
It's
That's
excellent.
Good stuff. All right, so there's a big controversy, I guess is the word, going on now, and it has for a long time. And I know it's Bentonville, but the Lake Bella Vista Dam, what
Yes.
can you tell us about that?
I've spoken to Mayor Orman a couple of times about it. They have been given a special permit by the Corps of Engineers to fix that earthen part that collapsed over the last floods, and only that. And the reason is there's still an outstanding lawsuit between between Bentonville and Cooper communities.
Oh.
You may remember that Bentonville had a plan to actually replace the dam. They had funding for it from FEMA as well as the Walton Family Foundation. A group of people then said, no, let's have it as a free-flowing stream. So that discussion went on for quite some time, back and forth. There were some legals involved, and the funding ran out. The timing ran out. So then Bentonville decided that they should move ahead and they would make the decision. And Cooper Communities, who had originally sold the land to Trailblazers, intervened and said, no, in the transfer agreement, there's verbiage that says if anything happens to the dam, then you have to fix it. So they went to court, and it ended up with Judge Scott, and he ruled in favor of Bentonville. CCI decided that they were going to appeal it, and that's where it sits now. And last I heard, it probably won't be in front of the Court of Appeal until next year.
Oh my goodness.
So we're still in limbo. There's a long way to go. There's a lot of concern that has been expressed to Bentonville about the undercut of some of the asphalt. And I've said that I'm terribly concerned that someone's going to go over the tape and stand on there to try and get a better view, and it's going to collapse, and down they go. Some people had voiced concerns that all the asphalt and rock and everything that had been holding the berm might be destroying or affecting the Mercy Way Bridge and the bridge that goes underneath 71 over by Casey's. Both bridges are fine. We had our engineers look at Mercy Bridge. It's high enough up that nothing's going to hit it, and there's a huge sandbar that's right in front of it that will catch anything. And then RDOT very quickly went and they had a look at the other bridge, and everything's fine. There's nothing wrong at all. And in reality, if you have heavy rock or heavy asphalt or whatever breaking, it's going to stay exactly where it falls. It's not going to move even with all the water. And but it's still a concern. I know that the Veterans Council, who looks after the The Wall of Honor is still very concerned about people coming to visit and possibly getting hurt, and it's a valid concern. They're also wondering, is it ever going to stop flooding, because they have plans to enhance the Wall of Honor, bring in more shrubs, and frankly, they're struggling with the greenery they have now, because every time it floods, it usually destroys some of it, and thankfully the Garden Club has come in and done a lot of cleanup for them. And we send down the fire department after each flood, and we hose down everything to get rid of all the dirt and the grime.
I saw them out there,
Yeah,
hosing it down.
that's right. But it's still a concern, and you know what I've shared with the Veterans Council is a number of years ago, the POA and ourselves collaborated with Burns McDonald, who's an engineering company, and they did a hydrology study. And there's 87 square miles of tributary that feed into Lake Bella Vista. Well, prior to the booming build that we've had not only in this city but to the south, the ground could absorb it. But there isn't much ground left anymore. And so it's hitting rooftops, it's hitting roads, and it's running. There aren't enough retention ponds that have been put in by the builders in the south of us to hold some of the water. So it's going to come racing down, and it's going to hit Lake Bella Vista. And what Burns McDonald tells me is, and I've shared this with the Veterans Council, is whether that dam is there or not, it's still going to flood because there's a huge volume of water. And even if the dam is completely removed, it still won't be able to handle it all. How bad will it flood is anybody's guess at this point. It all depends on the quantity of water. But it's not a good situation. I'm hopeful that perhaps the court case will get resolved earlier than next year. It's really, I guess, in the hands of the CCI and also Bentonville. And that's where it stands at the moment.
You know, to me, and maybe I'm just thinking backward, but to me, in my mind, it feels like that the water would run to Bentonville, but it's not that way at all.
Oh no, it comes in
backwards.
It comes in from all sources. Water that falls and runs in Avoca will end up in Lake Bella Vista.
Really?
Oh yeah, because it starts hitting all the tributaries that eventually link up with Little Sugar Creek. If you've ever seen from the air exactly how the creek runs and everything coming into it, there's a lot of water running into that creek. If you take A Street in the middle of a storm or after the storm and there's flooding, and you turn left going, I guess it'd be east on Walton, and the trail is right there, and you go over it, and you know you have that sharp right turn before you go up the hill as you're going into Bentonville. If you look straight ahead, you can see water running all over the place. And it's coming off the hillsides, it's coming off little creeks. There are streams that are fed underground, and it all surfaces and it goes into the creek, and away it goes. Perhaps a measure of how serious it is, if you look at the new interchange that they're building, have a look at all the box culverts that they're putting in.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, it's a little bigger than it was last time, and it's to accommodate water at a time of flood. So there's a tremendous amount of water that comes down there. Erosion is a concern, and you may have noticed that on the county side, they have already done a lot of erosion control. It's very similar to what the POA did up at Tanyard Creek using rock and trees and putting it along the shoreline. But then you get down past that bridge as it goes into the lake, and the erosion is bad down there.
Okay.
And that'll need to be addressed by Bentonville.
Well, I just certainly hope that we don't have a catastrophe between now and then.
Me too.
I mean, my goodness, anyway.
Yeah.
But thank you for the update, because I know a lot of people are very vocal on both sides.
Yes, they are.
And I feel for Mayor Ormond
Yes.
and the council, and you guys have a rough job. But thank you again for everything you do.
Thank you.
Okay, so we talk about this often, but I think it's changing quite a bit. Can you tell us about the COVID update? What's going on here, and what do we expect? And
Sure.
We're maskless today.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
I was making a presentation at Quorum Court last night, and it was wonderful. Nobody had masks on. They still had the plexiglass dividers up, which is fine, but almost everybody was there. I think there were 2 on Zoom, and that was it. And I spoke to the Bella Vista Business Association this morning.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay,
and,
good.
you know, the first thing I said is, isn't it great to meet in person, and isn't it great not to have masks? And everybody agreed that it was a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
We have seen a decline in the demand. I think I've mentioned that before. As a result, we have decreased our ordering, and we have come up with a new tact. So instead of asking people to come to us to get the shots, what we're now saying is, we're going to come to you. And so the first evidence of that will be at the farmers market this coming Sunday, where we'll have the paramedics set up, and if you want to drop by for a shot, feel free to do so. We're only offering Pfizer. We've done a little Moderna for Veteran Affairs down in Fayetteville, but there have been problems with that. And of course, there have been problems with J&J's, the one shot. And some people have said, oh, look, it's infinitesimal. Maybe it's 1%. My problem is, okay, so go and talk to the 1% if they're still around.
Yeah.
And that's just unacceptable. So we're going to stick with the Pfizer. It's a 2 shot, so you'll come back for a second in 3 weeks after the initial shot.
At the farmers market again?
It'll probably be the farmers market, or we've also spoken to Steve Morrow down at Allen's, and I've spoken with Garrett, who's the manager up at Harps, and they have agreed to let us set up pop-up clinics there as well. And so we'll be looking for community events that, you know, are going to be in the future. And that's the way we're going to try and tackle this thing, is through these pop-up clinics. What I'm really trying to get is 70% of the population, if we can get there, because you know, all the pundits say that's when herd immunity kicks in. I can tell you that we estimate that 50% of all the adults have now been inoculated. And that's darn good. That's better than most of the other cities in the area, and it's much better than the state.
What about I know that the Business Association is actually having their first outdoor meeting this Saturday. Are you going to be there?
I'll be there. I believe it starts at 9 o'clock. It's in the parking lot of Reardon. Some people have expressed concern, well, why outside? And I counter by saying, well, it's fresh air, and you do go to a farmer's market, that's outside. This is no different. This is people showing what they have. And it gives you the opportunity to network and to talk to the various vendors and the retailers. And I think an outdoor venue is great.
Well, and they had to make these plans way in advance.
Oh, yes, they did.
And that was during COVID. I think it's a nice thing.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't know that the mask thing was going to be lifted or anything else. And,
Yeah.
and they've had their plans in place. And, you know, the Business Association took it quite hard over the last year. And, but they're coming back. And we announced to them today that the city is helping them with a grant of $29,500 for this year and a similar sum next year. There are some key performance indicators that they have to meet, but they're not at all onerous, and they should be able to meet them. And we have signed a contract. It's been approved by council. We have to obligate through the budget on Monday. That's more of a housekeeping item. I've signed the first check, and it's already in their account.
Fabulous.
So we're hoping that that's going to help them along. I know that they have all sorts of plans, and if you're going to shop, please shop locally. It is so important.
It really is, and
Yeah.
let's support ourselves.
That's right.
Come on. All right, I think maybe what you and I ought to do is go to break.
Okay,
And because we've got some other pretty important things coming up.
we do.
All right, so I'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Hey, welcome back. We're about to finish a big update today. We've had so much to talk about. So, Mayor Christie, let's see what's going on with the bond.
Yeah, the bond issue and the various projects. If you've been out to Glasgow recently, you've seen the progress that's being made on Fire Station number 3.
Yes.
I was out there yesterday talking to the construction manager, and the roof is up. It's not shingled, but the roof is up. The walls are up, both the cement walls and the wooden walls in the living area. The one drawback is they've lost 53 days of work since they started because of all the rain. we're still hopeful that we're going to open in October. And it's going to be a great station. It'll be a 6-man. It'll have more equipment out there. Much better to meet the needs of the public out in that area as opposed to the 2-man that's almost across the street from them. So that's fire station number 3. The fire training tower, we have looked at a lot of land and a lot of parcels, and we're trying to keep it away from residential as much as we can. Mm-hmm. The latest piece that we're looking at is off 340, which is Lancashire. It's sort of between Casey's and the Nazarene Church. It's on a very high berm.
Oh.
And we would build behind, and that berm will sort of hide it a bit. There are no houses in the immediate vicinity. That's where the cemetery is as well. And it backs onto fire station number 4. So
well, that's handy.
Yeah, it is. So we're looking for 6 acres. It would have to be a lot split. The owner, of course, is Cooper Communities. So we have made an offer to them, and we're waiting for them to reply. The public safety building, which is the most complex and the biggest, which will be on 279, right beside the streets department. You've heard me speak in the past, we have a water problem. Mm-hmm. Essentially, just to recap, everyday water is serviced by Centerton. The POA does not have a line there because that piece of property is not within the POA. So that's great, you know, for washing hands, doing dishes, all that stuff. But we have to have fire suppression because we have to sprinkle the entire building. And that's 46,000 square feet. So before we even went to bond, we approached John Cooper, who at the time was president of CCI. And there were a number of people there, and the question was asked, will we get water? And the answer, John said, absolutely yes. And then later in that same year, which was 2019, again before we went to bond, John reassured us, don't worry that we're going to get water. Now, in the past, when a member of the Cooper family said something, regardless of what other people may think, they were always solid on their word. And so we proceeded. John was moved into a different role, and a man by the name of Kent Berger, who was their CFO, was put into the job as president. So we went to him and said, okay, John has promised water, we're now ready to go. We're going to pay the entire cost of bringing the pipes up to the closest POA connection because the Centerton water cannot handle a fire suppression system. The pipe is too small. But the POA has a larger pipe up near the corner of 279 and is it Hope? I can't remember where the craft fair land is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So he said no. And we said, why not? And he said, back in the day when you were first founding as a city, you took all our reserve properties and you put them as parkland instead of being residence or commercial. And I said, well, that's fine. There's a whole process that we can go through. We'll bring them to the Planning Commission. If the Planning Commission sees no problem, then they will recommend that it goes to the council. It'll be an ordinance. It'll require 3 readings. And it'll be a lot of slugging because there are some 61 parcels involved. But we're ready and willing to work with you. And he said, well, I want to see results first before I give you water. This is a long process.
Yeah.
And so we have exchanged legal letters back and forth, and they have still confirmed and said no. And from our perspective, the fact that the previous administration did that for whatever reason has no bearing on our ability to get water for a very important public safety building that, frankly, we've never had before.
Right.
And I'm a little astounded that they won't support the community or the public safety. They say that they're great, they're great proponents of Bella Vista. Well, it doesn't quite ring true when you see their performance on this. Meanwhile, they have put forth 11 parcels that they would like to have rezoned, and we're not holding any kind of, temperamental thing against them. We're handling each one as we would handle anybody else in a professional matter with courtesy, and we will let it run its course through the Planning Commission, and then it'll come to council. And we'll probably have to have a special council meeting because 11 rezones will consume a lot of time.
Yes.
And the public also has to have their ability to comment as well.
Yes.
And so, there will be open hearings at the Planning Commission for each one of these pieces of property. And the public will also be able to address council. Now, if there are some parcels that nobody really has any objections to because there's no reason to do so,
Somebody pull
then
that curtain because there's stuff below, like frames.
Go ahead.
okay, then we will be able to fast forward it. But who knows? But the public has to have their say in all this because that's part of the process that we go through. And it is a lengthy process. And I'm sure that they would like to see results, and I think they will see some results.
But
we
we're going to
need-
play fair.
Yeah, exactly. It's an even keel for everybody. We don't give anybody any special favors.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they had promised water, and they're now reneging on it. And so this coming Monday, there is going to be a resolution, which we discussed in our work session this past Monday. And it reads as follows, because I think it's very important that you, the constituents, understand what this is saying. It's a resolution authorizing the city staff attorney to initiate legal proceedings against Cooper Community, Inc., any parent or subsidiary company and/or any of its officers or directors to facilitate condemnation and possession of property interest necessary to secure water access for purposes of fire protection at the proposed new city public safety building. So what that says is basically eminent domain.
Yes.
And we have a number of strategies that we're looking at the moment. We need to move quickly because we now have 100% drawings, which means the architects are finished. We've gone to bid. All the bid from the contractors are in and they're within budget. However, as everyone may have heard, the cost of wood and other building material is going up dramatically.
Yes.
And we've already been given a heads up by Nab Holtz, who is our construction manager. If we don't move to council soon and get a guaranteed maximum price, which will cap it, then we're going to see at least $200,000 more. And we just can't do that.
Right.
So, it would have been very easy for Cooper just to simply say, sure, we've promised you water, and will you help us with these rezones? Because we're helping them anyway.
Exactly.
And I don't really like doing this, but my job is to make sure that this community is safe and that they're getting the best protection that we can possibly put forward, and to plan for future years. And this building, we're planning for 30 years. And it may be the same with the land for the fire training tower. We've already had it appraised. Hopefully all will be well, but if I have to do eminent domain on that, we will do it because it is the right thing for the community.
You had a plan in place with the POA and that word. And remind me again why that couldn't happen?
Well, the POA cannot give water to anyone without Cooper's permission if the
I'm
water is
sorry. I meant-
outside of the covenant.
No, I meant the fire training station.
Oh, yes. We were originally looking at some POA land down in the southwest side. And then after the bond was passed and we were able to let the civil engineers go in and look at it, there was a huge drainage problem that we didn't see.
Oh, okay.
And it was going to cost $700,000. So we went back to the POA and I said to Tom, this isn't going to work, and he understood completely.
Okay.
And through this whole water thing, they have been extremely supportive. They are anxious to provide water
Of course.
for the new public safety building because they realize the importance of it to the community.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Well, I'm sorry you're having to go through all of that. I
Well,
really am.
it is unfortunate, and as I say, I don't like doing it, but our hands are tied. We need to move forward.
Yes. Impact fees.
Yes, impact fees, if you remember, are fees that are assessed to new homes, not existing homes. And we hired a consulting company to actually come in and do their magic. And it is magic because they use all sorts of formulas and calculations. And the reason that you hire them, especially one that's been through it many, many times, is because if you end up in court, you need someone who can defend the math and defend all the methodology that they use. So we've hired Tischler Bice. A number of cities around here have used them, including Bentonville. And a number of years ago, Bentonville did end up in court, and this company was very successful in proving that they knew what they were doing. So the bottom line is, it's to provide additional funds for fire, police, and library. We cannot use it on streets. And we can only use it on new purchases over and above what we have today. So you can't use it to replace existing assets. The price tag is about $1,100 at the moment, and then it's split between the three entities. Once you get the money, you have 7 years to spend it. And so it's a rolling amount, if you like, and we can watch it. We know the homes that have been built. If after 7 years you don't spend that money, then you have to return it to the builder.
Gotcha.
And that's fair ball. Some people have said it's an accounting nightmare. Not if you're mechanized like we are. My finance director has said, don't worry about it. You know, we can take care of it. So it is going in front of council on Monday. And I believe it's going in as an ordinance because it will be a law. And I think for the most part, everybody on council is supportive. We've talked to a lot of builders. Some of them don't like it because it increases the cost of a home, especially at a time when they're paying these outrageous prices for wood and other material. But it goes back to my basic core belief that we have to manage the growth. We cannot let the growth manage us.
Right.
And I'm not a big fan of raising taxes because we've got a shortfall on the commercial tax side, which we still do. And so this is a way to ensure that there will at least be some funds that we can use towards the new assets to compensate for future growth. Is it going to cover everything? Oh, heavens no.
Right.
But at least it gives us a bit of a cushion so that we can work with it.
I gotcha. All right, well, I think we have one more thing to talk about today, the American Rescue Plan.
Yes, that was signed into law, I believe, back in March by the president. And it gives every state, county, and city a certain amount of money. And our allocation is $5.5 million, 5.495, I think. What we don't know is what we can spend it on. It has been set at a very high level where you can reimburse yourselves for some of the COVID expenses. Well, we already had money from the CARES Act. That's done.
Yeah.
And you can spend it on water, sewer, and broadband. Well, what does that mean? And so we have been working with the Municipal League, who has been working with the National League of Cities, who lobbies on behalf of all cities in the country, dealing with Treasury, who is putting out these guidance. And the first guidelines came in on May the 10th, 151 pages, and frankly, it raised more questions than it answered.
Oh my.
And so we've had to go back again. I don't have water or sewer, but what does water mean? And for example, drainage is a huge problem here. And can I put in new culverts? Or Pinion Drive down by T.H. Rogers is a mess, primarily because drainage was incorrectly put in place when that road was built. It's going to cost us $1 million for a quarter mile to fix it. Can I use this money for that? Broadband, I know we've got four holes where there's no internet access inside the city.
My, I
And
didn't know that.
Oh yes, I've been talking to AT&T and Cox for, well, 7 years. And the cost of putting it in the ground is prohibitive to them, and they won't get the ROI that they're looking for. So next question, can we partner with Cox and AT&T and get the stuff in the ground so that they can then furnish and give the residents in those areas the internet that they deserve? Because you've got kids that are now remote from school. I suspect that the working from home syndrome is going to last.
Yes.
And so people have to have internet access to be able to do that. And I've had some discussions with Cox. They're very much in favor. I have yet to approach AT&T. I'm waiting for the answer back from the Municipal League or from Treasury. What does that structure of an agreement look like? I came from telecommunications. I was in it for 22 years. I don't want to be in the business of owning a network.
Right.
I want the carrier to look after that, but give our residents the service that they need. And that one I'm very big on. And I know the governor is very big on broadband access as well. Sitting in the sidelines, you have the president now talking about an infrastructure bill that includes broadband.
Yeah.
So am I better off to use this money from the rescue plan on broadband, or are we going to be given more over here so I can get more reach? And,
Yeah.
you know, it's nice, I suppose, that they're going to throw all this money at us, but I need some guidance, and so do the other mayors. I'm on a weekly call, in fact, in about an hour from now, with about 9 or 10 of the area mayors, and we all have the same concerns, and we've been voicing them to Treasury through these other groups. What are you going to do? For the towns with populations less than 50,000, we will not get our money direct. It has to go through the state. That process hasn't even been figured out yet.
Oh, goodness.
The state cannot take any of the funds and store it away as a commission or a fee or anything else. It has to flow straight through to us. We get 50% of the funds this year and 50% of the funds next year. If you have a population that's greater than 50,000, then you will get the money direct. And last night I was talking to Judge Mooring, and the county has their half. They're getting 54 million, and he has now 27 million in the bank. The problem is, they're giving the money first, and then you have to report later what you've spent the money on, and if they come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't qualify, then you got to pay the money back. Whereas the previous CARES Act, we had to justify every penny up front before they gave us the money. And it was a lot of work, but once we had the money, it was secure. This time, they're giving the money first, and then we'll see if it's going to qualify when you give your annual report of the big cities or quarterly. That's a little scary.
It is.
And so I want to make sure we've got all our ducks lined up and we know exactly what we can spend it on before we start doing this. So if that hasn't been figured out, I'm going to do the same as the county judge. If we get our first half, it's going in the bank and it's going to sit there until we know for sure.
That only makes sense.
Yeah.
And government moves so slowly, so
It
you
does.
don't know when you're going to, that was no reflection on the city, it was a reflection on government in general.
Well, the first half was to have been paid to the larger cities. I think it's 60 days after signature, and that's been done.
Okay, yeah.
But for us smaller cities, they had to do it within 60 days, but then they had a 30-day extension, and then they have a 30-day extension after that.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Exactly. Well, you know what? It sounds to me like that this next city council meeting will be really interesting for the public.
It will. I hope everybody attends and listens.
Absolutely, and it is so easy to do that. It's so easy to call in on the Zoom call and
Yes.
watch everything. You
Yep.
can go to the city website and look for the agenda for the whatever's coming up, and right at the top there is a Zoom link. You just click on it and you can watch the whole thing.
And that's not only city council meetings,
It's
both the work
everything.
session and the regular one.
Everything.
It's special meetings, it's the planning commission, it's the Board of Zoning Adjustment, so that you can be fully informed on what is happening in your city government. It's very important.
That's right. So my big deal, folks, and the reason I'm here running my mouth all the time and talking to important people is communication. Please don't say you don't know what's going on. There's so many ways to find out. So thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I will look forward to the city council meeting, and I look forward to next month when you come up with all these other things we're going to talk about.
Okay,
All
sounds
right.
good. Thank
Thanks
you
a
very
million.
much.
You
Bye-bye.
bet.